Today we're tackling one of history's biggest questions. How did the mighty Roman Empire, a civilization that stood for over 1,000 years, just fall apart? Many people imagine it as a single, dramatic event, like a switch being flipped. But the truth is far more complex and fascinating. It wasn't an overnight collapse, but a long, slow decline, like a giant tree rotting from the inside out. Let's peel back the layers and discover what really happened. So where do we even begin? Most historians point to the 3rd century AD as the start of the crisis of the 3rd century. This wasn't just a bad decade. It was a nearly 50-year period of chaos. Imagine this. In just 49 years, Rome had over 26 different emperors. Most of them met a violent end. This constant civil war created a vicious cycle. Generals would march their armies away from the frontiers to fight for the throne, leaving the borders wide open for barbarian incursions. Tribes like the Goths, Vandals, and Franks saw their chance and started raiding deep into Roman territory, causing widespread destruction and instability. The empire was tearing itself apart from within, while being attacked from without. This political turmoil had a devastating effect on the economy. With constant warfare, trade routes became unsafe. The flow of goods that had been the lifeblood of the empire slowed to a trickle. To pay the soldiers they desperately needed, emperors started debasing the currency. They would mint new coins with less and less silver, mixing it with cheaper metals. People quickly realized their money was becoming worthless, leading to runaway inflation. Prices for everyday goods like bread and oil skyrocketed. Farmers couldn't sell their produce, and city dwellers couldn't afford to buy it. The intricate economic web that held the empire together was unraveling, thread by thread. Many people abandoned the cities altogether, heading back to the countryside just to survive, a process that began to dismantle the urban-centered Roman way of life. In the late 3rd century, a strong emperor named Diocletian came to power. He saw that the empire was simply too big and too broken for one person to manage. His solution was radical. He split it in two. He created the Tetrarchy, or Rule of Four, with 2 senior emperors called Augusti, and 2 junior emperors called Caesars, one pair for the east and one for the west. This temporarily stabilized things. It made administration more efficient and defense more manageable. His successor, Constantine the Great, would later reunite the empire but make another monumental decision. He moved the capital from Rome to a new city in the east, Byzantium, which he renamed Constantinople. This was a symbolic and strategic shift. The center of power, wealth, and prestige was now in the Greek-speaking East, leaving the Latin-speaking West feeling more and more like a neglected backwater. Now let's talk about the barbarians. This is a term the Romans used for anyone outside the empire, and it's often misunderstood. These weren't just mindless hordes bent on destruction. Many of these groups, like the Goths, had a complex relationship with Rome. They served as mercenaries in the Roman army, traded with Roman merchants, and even admired Roman culture. But in the late 4th century, a new and terrifying force emerged from the east: the Huns. Led by figures like Attila, their brutal military campaigns pushed other tribes westward, right into the Roman Empire. In 376 AD, the Goths, fleeing the Huns, asked for permission to cross the Danube River and settle in Roman territory. The Romans agreed, but then horribly mistreated them, leading to starvation and exploitation. 2 years later, the desperate Goths rose up, and at the Battle of Adrianople, they didn't just defeat a Roman army, they killed the Eastern Emperor, Valens. This was a catastrophic psychological blow. It showed the world that the Roman legions were not invincible. The Battle of Adrianople opened the floodgates. The Western Roman Empire, in particular, struggled to control its borders. The final century of the West was marked by a series of major incursions. In 410 AD, the Visigoths, led by Alaric, did the unthinkable. They sacked the city of Rome itself. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City had fallen to a foreign enemy. The shockwave was immense. People across the empire felt that the world was ending. Although the city recovered, the empire's prestige was shattered. A few decades later, in 455, the Vandals, who had crossed from Spain into North Africa and built a navy, sailed across the Mediterranean and sacked Rome again, this time more thoroughly. They stripped the city of its remaining wealth, and the term vandalism has been associated with senseless destruction ever since. While these external pressures were immense, the internal decay continued. The Roman government became increasingly corrupt and inefficient. The tax system was a mess. Wealthy landowners used their influence to evade taxes, leaving the burden to fall on small farmers, and the urban poor, crushing them and making it impossible for the state to raise the funds it needed. The Roman military also changed dramatically. It became heavily barbarized, meaning most of its soldiers were now of Germanic origin, not Roman. These soldiers often had more loyalty to their direct commanders, who were also often Germanic, than to a distant, faceless emperor in a city they'd never seen. This created a situation where the army meant to defend Rome was no longer truly Roman. So when did it officially end? The date most historians cite is 476 AD. In that year, a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer, who was a commander in the Roman army, led a revolt. He deposed the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, a diminutive echo of Rome's founder and its first emperor. But Odoacer didn't declare himself the new emperor. Instead, he sent the imperial regalia, the symbols of power, like the diadem and purple robe, to the Eastern emperor in Constantinople, essentially saying, "The West doesn't need an emperor anymore." And just like that, with a whimper rather than a bang, the Western Roman Empire ceased to exist as a political entity. But here's the crucial part. For most people living at the time, life didn't change overnight. The fall of Rome wasn't an event they would have read about in the morning news. The aqueducts didn't all stop working on September 4, 476. It was a gradual process of transformation. Roman institutions, laws, and language slowly blended with the cultures of the Germanic peoples who settled in the former provinces. In the East, the story is completely different. The Eastern Roman Empire, which we now call the Byzantine Empire, didn't fall. It thrived. Centered in Constantinople, it would continue for another 1,000 years, preserving Roman law, Greek culture, and Christian tradition, until it finally fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. So the collapse of Rome wasn't a simple story of barbarian invasions. It was a perfect storm of political instability, economic crisis, social decay, overexpansion, and environmental factors we're still uncovering. It serves as a powerful reminder that even the greatest civilizations are fragile. The legacy of Rome is all around us, in our languages, our laws, our architecture, and our ideas of government. Understanding its fall helps us understand the world we live in today. It shows us how complex societies can unravel, and how, even from the ashes of an old world, a new one can be born. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through one of history's most epic tales. Let me know in the comments what you think was the biggest reason for Rome's fall. Until next time, stay curious.